Hey everyone, welcome to the Anarchy Podcast. 99% of traders will never make consistent profits, so why listen to the 99% of advice? On this show, we're going to challenge some of the most hallowed and repeated tenets of trading, and in doing so, set you up to succeed where others fail. Spoiler alert, we don't have a secret strategy or magic wand that will let you skip out on the hard work of learning the markets, but we can debunk viewpoints that are holding you back. If that sounds good to you, come join us. Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. Today we're finishing the second part of our interview with Bob. If you haven't heard part one yet, I highly recommend it. We're talking with Bob, a yet-to-be successful trader, about his journey and challenges. We ended last episode talking about an issue Bob faces with fear of losing what he's gained when he starts having success with an account. So that's where we pick up. Hope you enjoy. I'm trying to think of a good practical way to kind of conquer that specific problem. I typically actually am the opposite. I typically string losses together. So which is why if I win my first trade, I'll just be done because I typically do 2-to-1 risk to reward. And so if I get my first trade of the day, I'll just be done. But some people are different. And so, but if I lose, and I have losing days, I tend to chain them together because I'll get into a negative space where it's like, oh no, I'm down. Oh, woe is me. And so you can get into I can get into a negative spiral. You've got the opposite problem where you get really indifferent when you're down and you don't care, which is good, which is of course where you want to be. But when you're winning, then you have that fear of losing. So I wonder, Jordan, what are your thoughts on like specific ways to kind of conquer that one, conquer the fear of losing what you have?
Essentially, I think that's the key of why you say you've been great. You can paper trade, because paper trading, you don't have it. It sounds like you have an edge. Sounds like honestly, even if your account's down, you're great. But once you start actually making money, you start, you start getting fearful, et cetera, et cetera. And so like how much time have you spent actually trading like quote unquote real money, whether it's prop firms or not, versus paper trading? Like I'm just curious, like right now, how much out of the last 20 years or whatever, how much of that has been trading like with real stakes?
Uh, Probably out of the 20 years, maybe a total of a year, but not consecutive, like a
Right.
month here, a month there.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
always a really, really small account too.
Yeah. So I mean, so it doesn't really matter the size of the account.
Yeah.
Although, but that would make a lot of sense because that means you probably heard one of our recent episodes. I think we discussed fear. But essentially you've got to desensitize yourself to that. And the only way you can do that is honestly by actually doing it using real stakes and getting up. Um and that's using real funds, right? So you can paper trade. I think you're the perfect example. You've paper traded for 20 years, right? And you're good at it. Like I guarantee you that you're good at it, and you're making, and you could make money all day long. And if someone was to secretly attach a real account to your paper trading account, man, you'd probably be a billionaire by now.
If only
Yeah.
we need that. We need to make that business. Just
We do.
secretly go into.
We secretly hack people's MT. We secretly add copy traders to people's MT4 demo accounts.
But that's, I mean, the
Yeah.
thing with you've done it so long, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have an edge. You have, in fact, it sounds like you have a pretty significant edge, right? So you can successfully paper trade and you can do it all day, every day, and you have a lot of experience at it. So to me, it sounds like you're real close. Because and especially if you're good with losing, like not many people are good with losing. I'm bad with losing. Like I just said, I tend to string losses together. You get indifferent when you start losing, which is I think that's really powerful. So it sounds
To a
like to
point.
me, yeah. I mean, sure, to a point, I guess. But to me, it sounds like Jordan said, getting some more experience, doing these, doing funded accounts. This is what we talk about a lot, right? Because it gives you some stakes. Once you get a little bit more experience on that, I think that's probably you're going to be in real good shape. I mean, as long as you put in a little bit more time into trading with real money and you start getting those funded accounts higher, that's probably the best way. I mean, it's, I guess, not, not some genius way there, but just putting in a little bit more time into those funded accounts, giving yourself some stakes, making yourself feel it, and then, you recognize it. And that's a really good thing. I mean, you're recognizing what your fear is, right? Fear of losing what you already have. That can really help you, because I mean, I'm sure you journal that, and now you can start going, yeah, man, I was afraid of losing what I had. And it helps you put voice to those fears when they come up.
Yeah, and then just practicing, like when you feel that fear, like if you feel that way, just step away from your computer. Like don't trade through it, right? Like if you recognize that that's how you're feeling, like that's a great time to go, as you said earlier, go do the dishes, go do something. Like don't trade when you're feeling that way. Wait until you're not feeling that emotion and then come back and trade. Like practice, very specifically practicing. If I feel this way, I'm not going to trade. Will start also helping, train yourself not to, even if you feel those emotions, just don't trade when you feel them, right? Like try to go do something else, distract yourself, and then come back kind of refreshed at some other point. Again, it'll take practice, but might help as well.
You would recommend that as opposed to, I mean, if I'm going to pay, and I am paying for my education, if I'm going to pay for my education, you think that would be better than to acknowledge the fear, but do it anyways to help desensitize myself to it?
I think both, because what a lot of traders do, and it's a skill. Like, have you ever gone a day not taken a trade? Like
I was about to ask the same thing.
if you sit down at the computer to trade, have you ever not traded?
That'd be a tough one to answer. Probably just because of the sheer number of days, but not too often. I usually panic and get into something for fear of missing.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
best setup so far.
Which kind of shows like that what I would be recommending is that, there's some fear of missing out, and you're also not taking, I think Levi discussed this a few weeks ago. You're not just taking your A+ setups, you're taking some B's, some C's, some D's, whatever it is. And so practicing being able to just go, listen, there's two steps. You need to get over those emotions by trading as well, but you also need to learn to get over some of these emotions before you start trading, because some of these emotions, you'll save yourself a lot of time and effort and money by realizing you're not in the headspace to trade. And so taking a step back, even if it's just for 10 minutes, take a step back, go do something else, go do some push-ups, go wash some dishes, do something, take a walk around the block, come back, sit down, see how you feel. If you're in a better, and then start trading. But really, like as I said, I think this was a while back, a few months ago. There is a huge, I would highly recommend one day just sitting down in front of your computer and going, today I'm not trading. I'm just going to watch the market, and just watch. Don't trade. Don't do anything. Just watch it and learn, because over trading and taking trades that are not ideal is kind of one of the main killers of traders, because your brain starts playing with you, and you start seeing setups where there aren't actually setups, etc.
Hey everyone, Levi here to quickly ask, if you're finding value in the podcast, we would love it if you'd take a moment to follow the show and leave a review. It helps us out a lot and enables us to bring you the best possible content. Thanks for being part of the community. We love you guys. Dude, there's this I have that problem. I will watch the charts and like you were talking about, I will watch the charts. I will watch like 2 or 3 real good setups go by and I won't take them. Not out of because it broke my rules, because just out of fear. And then at the end of my trading time, I'll take a losing trade. So I'll call correctly 3 trades, 4 trades in a row, and then I'll lose the last one. I'll just take a loser, a stinker. And it's so frustrating. But for me, that's because my tendency is that fear of you have those two fears tugging at each other, the fear of losing money, what you already have, which is why you don't get into trades. You don't get into trades because you're afraid you'll lose them. And so you don't go into them. But then at the end of the day, it'll switch. My fear will actually pivot from fear of missing out. Fear of losing to fear of missing out. And so I'll have these two fears that at the end of my trading time will switch, that are kind of opposed to each other. And then my fear of losing what I already have at the beginning of my trading time makes me not take good trades. And then at the end of my trading time, my fear of missing out will make me take a bad trade. And so I'll end up losing anyway, which is incredibly frustrating. But it's really interesting how those two fears kind of play together when it comes to me. When it comes to over trading or not, when it comes to like not getting into trades, it's really hard at the end of the day for me not to take any trades still. And so I count it as a win. I've told this to Jordan, when I go a day without trading, it's a absolute win for me because it's hard, but it's a little bit like meditation. It's day trading meditation, which is you're just, every time the distraction comes, you just push it away. Every time you want to trade, you just push it away and you just watch the market. I think it's really powerful. Jordan's done this before. You just sit and you've promised yourself, no matter how good of a setup comes, you're just going to watch it. And it's a really good exercise. It's a really interesting exercise that helps you kind of strengthen that part of your psyche.
That really goes straight to what you were talking about a few weeks ago with the discipline part. I feel the stress already thinking about that. I'm looking forward to this challenge.
Dude, it's so difficult sometimes. Because you know, the day that you decide not to take any trades, your God setup will come along. like the type that you'd bet your house on, you know, if you were an idiot. Like it always happens. And because your brain is so freaking powerful, you can see patterns in everything. And maybe it is an amazing setup, but the days where you choose not to trade, the best setups come along. That's how it always works. But that's part of the building that discipline is kind of pushing through that. It's a really powerful exercise.
Yeah, very intriguing. And definitely highly recommend it.
So Bob, we don't talk specifics on strategy all that often because frankly, getting into the weeds on specific strategies is kind of,
it's individual. Yeah, it's very
individual and people will make money doing completely different things. I was just curious on kind of, you said you've switched strategies a lot. Again, that is standard, right? I mean, that's everybody who's ever, traded before. You switch strategies until hopefully one day you figure out that it's not the strategy. So you've switched a bunch of strategies. Kind of what would, where are you kind of landed now? And kind of what are you putting your time into? Doesn't terribly matter. There's a million different ways, but I'm just curious.
I'm leaning a lot more, and I have really good success with the break and retest.
Okay.
Because it's pretty clear if I'm sane and calm and not fearing or panicking, it's usually fairly clear when it comes back to a certain level. And I've also learned to trust that even with that setup, it's okay if it goes against me. I've also learned to take my stop losses a little bit larger. I don't have to get the entry exact.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a huge one.
That's a huge one. Jordan and I were just talking about this. Jordan was playing around with the stop loss. Because that's a big tendency for us. Because like you want to be the genius, at least for me. Like you want to be the genius who put the stop loss like just a pip above, and you just scalped it perfect, and you were the sniper, and you got the headshot, and then you take it 10-1. that's my temptation, and that's a big one for me.
Yeah, because if you get it so close, you have more room before it hits the next possible resistance or support. Where if you have a larger stop loss, there's only like a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2 ratio before it gets to an area where you expect some sort of resistance to it.
Right.
But 1-to-1 win a week is going to be 1 billion times than 10 1-to-10 losers.
Yeah, and it's also way harder to adjust your risk, right? Like if you're doing, when it comes to risk reward, I think you already mentioned it, Bob, which is, it doesn't terribly matter as much in that it's mostly just changes the math, but it does change your psychology, right? Like it changes how many losers you have in a row, which can affect your psychology, and it can also affect your risk, right? If you're doing 1 to 5 risk to reward, and now you're expecting essentially to lose 4 in a row before you get a winner, it makes it a lot harder to manage that risk. So that's an interesting take. I've found the same thing, putting that stop loss a little bit further away, just adjusting for the natural noise of the market, and then just being less greedy. Because for me, it was greed, right? Like anytime I'm trying to get my stop loss real nice and tight, it's because I'm getting greedy, and
And I mean,
that's a big problem for me.
yeah, and I mean more technically from gold. I mean, gold is traditionally quite volatile, and honestly, more new traders lose money on gold than any other essentially pair, if you want to call it. It's kind of a pair, I guess.
Gold, dollar.
Yeah, so you've got gold, and then pound, pound yen. I mean, those two are the two most common pairs for people to lose money on, because they are volatile. So, learning, where to put your stop loss, as you mentioned, is super, super important. So it's cool that you're learning that. As I said, I usually recommend people not start with gold, but you've been doing this a long time, so go for it. You can make a lot of money on gold. But yeah, it definitely gets very wicky, depending on when you're trading it.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing I've learned is to not, I'll wait till it's not as wiki. And that's one of the things I like about the beginning of the Asian session. It's usually less of a large ATR, smaller ATR. Good English there.
So, I mean, in conclusion, because we've got to kind of wrap our time up here, Bob, is really appreciate you coming on and joining today and kind of sharing your learnings and your experiences over the past couple decades. I think as Levi said, you're so close to being able to be consistently profitable and making money. So would love to essentially let's keep going at it, man. And let's have a follow-up here in 3 to 6 months. Let's have another follow-up call where we get you on here and let's see what kind of progress and what you've learned, and let's see the journey. We'd love to follow this journey and see how it goes over the next year or two, to where you get to consistent profitability. And then of course we got to have a celebration once you do, right?
Yeah, nothing like that follow-up to add a little more pressure, but also accountability and discipline. Thank you.